Hey guys, welcome back. I was just outside working on my Interceptor in the driveway and I thought I'd come in and do another reaction video for you guys. At the end of all of my videos, I tell you guys that if you put a car in the comments, I will try to find it. I had to use a different website, but I found this 96 Volkswagen Passat TDI diesel direct injected turbo. So let's see what Motorweek had to say. I think this is a shorter video, but I have some things to say at the end.
During the mid-'80s, diesel-powered cars enjoyed a brief period of popularity. Brief because some diesel car engines were simply unreliable.
Brief because most of them were garbage.
Brief, too, because the push for better fuel economy disappeared as gasoline prices dropped. But there are those who remember their diesels fondly.
Okay, this Passat, I have to be honest with you, I really like the styling, and I mean all over. Because, you know, some cars have to have body kits and spoilers and stripes and all of that. But this body shape, I think, is timeless. Like, I think this would look good today. The color helps, the wheels help, but it just looks so clean. And I think if you looked at the early Volkswagen, the early Audi A4s and S4s, this is very close, I think, in body style. And that's not I don't think that's a happenstance because Volkswagen and Audi work together.
Especially Volkswagen diesels. Well, VW has not forsaken its loyalists and is bringing populist.
Yeah, I like the way the lower lights on the bumper work with the headlights. I think that looks really cohesive.
Diesels back to American roads, but this time with a new boost. A turbo boost, to be precise, long a top purveyor of diesel-powered cars.
You see, when you look at these cars, you know, sometimes when a car maker puts out a special edition car with a special powertrain, they've got to have all kind of crazy badges and all kind of crazy different ornaments around the car. My friend Matt, his Toyota Corolla, the only way you can tell that it's a hybrid from a distance is he's taught me that the badges are blue. Only on the Toyota hybrids are they blue. And like this Jetta, the only way you would know that it's a diesel is it just has that little TDI badge on it. I think that's really tasteful.
Cars like the Rabbit and Jetta diesels of the late 70s and early 80s, Volkswagen is returning to its oil burner heritage with the Passat TDI, or turbo direct injection diesel. Indistinguishable from...
My mom had a 1980 Volkswagen Dasher diesel station wagon, and I'll get into that debacle here in just a little bit.
The petrol-fired midsize Passat on the outside, the TDI packs some of Volkswagen's most innovative technology.
The rear end here. If you notice at the lip of the trunk, it's not a spoiler, it's actually part of the trunk, the mold of the trunk lid. I really think that looks good because you don't have to add anything to it. My friend Matt has told me that a lot of cars, you know, don't need a spoiler, and I'm starting to notice that more. I was always that spoiler guy, cars need a spoiler, but I've seen now there are cars that really do look clean without one. Plus I like these taillights. They're very reminiscent of 90s Volvos.
On the inside, technology that's a far cry from a decade ago when Volkswagen first touted the advantage of bolting a turbocharger to an otherwise conventional diesel design. Today, the turbo is still there, but the key to Volkswagen's latest engine is direct fuel injection.
It's crazy that in 96, this car had direct injection, which is where instead of on top of the piston, the fuel is shot in midway. And it's crazy to see that in 96 because it's hard to buy a car today that isn't direct injected, because direct injected cars have a couple of benefits. One, you can get more power out of a much smaller motor. Hence, my Kia has a 2-liter 4 and it's making almost 180 horsepower, when back in the day, a 2-liter 4-cylinder might make 110. The other thing that direct injection helps with is fuel mileage.
TDI uses an intercooler, sophisticated electronics, and trick injectors that send fuel directly into the cylinder head in place of the crude ignition pre-chambers of standard diesels. In layman's terms, this means that the combination of proven turbocharging and
My dad, the last car he drove was a 2004 Volkswagen Jetta TDI. If I have said Jetta in this review, I apologize. This is the Passat, of course. But his diesel was really, really smooth, the opposite of what they used to be. And I remember you could ride in the car and very seldom even be able to tell that the car was a diesel unless you rolled down your window.
the new direct injection allows the TDI's 1.9-liter four-cylinder to make 90 horsepower and a very significant 149 pound-feet of torque. It also softens the normally high-pressure diesel process, making the TDI very smooth and amazingly quiet, and very clean as well. The TDI even meets California's strict emission requirements. But how does
That says a lot because California emissions requirements are ridiculous. In fact, most cars that we have here in the Midwest, when they're sold in California, they're choked up for emissions. Plus, in California, like Arizona, you actually have to get your car inspected to make sure that it's running correctly and not polluting, which is really difficult. So that says a lot.
How does it drive, you might ask? Surprisingly well. Those members of our staff that remember the last diesel era, and we won't say how old they are, found the TDI to be smooth, responsive, remarkably torquey, and smoke-free. It also starts quickly, even when cold, often with no waiting for the glow plugs. Granted, with a best 0 to 60 time of 10.3 seconds, it's not
10.3 seconds is nothing to write home about, but I will say, considering it had like 90 horsepower, this Passat did pretty well. I think a lot of that is because diesels are so torquey.
going to blow off too many gasoline competitors. But when it's a long way to the next fuel pump, the Passat TDI leaves them all gasping in its wake. EPA fuel mileage ratings are 37 city and 45 highway.
You know, I still have friends that will tout a diesel vehicle, turbo diesel, over a hybrid, but you can't make up the numbers. I mean, a hybrid car has more horsepower, a hybrid gets better fuel economy, and I don't know if you've looked at the pump lately, but diesel prices are higher than gasoline prices, so you can kind of see why there's not a lot of diesel vehicles on the road. But you will see a hybrid every time you go to the mall, like every other car.
Our manual transmission test car returned 39 miles per gallon. Expect a little less with the 4-speed automatic due later this year. If this sort of fuel mileage appeals to you and you're willing to trade away a little acceleration, the Passat TDI carries a base price of $19,430. Our well-optioned test car came in at $21,485. And if the Passat is not your first choice among Volkswagen models, fear not.
Being that I used to be a Volvo guy, of course, I look at that red Volkswagen Jetta wagon and I think, yeah, that's what I would probably go for.
Wolfsburg will be launching TDI-equipped Golfs and Jettas soon. Now, we doubt that VW alone can ignite a new diesel craze, but for those who love diesels, the Passat TDI is a breath of fresh air.
Okay, my father passed away driving a Volkswagen Jetta TDI, but before he left, you know, he really loved that car when he bought it. It got great gas mileage. I remember when you'd be inside of it, you would never know it was a diesel because it ran so quiet. They were a far cry from the diesels from the early 80s. Let me tell you, those things were made from nightmares. My mom and dad had that 80 Volkswagen Dasher wagon diesel with a 4-speed. And as a kid, you don't notice things because you don't know about cars and you don't know about horsepower numbers. So it was just the car that we had. It was mom's car. But with the 4-speed manual transmission, you know, I learned you were wringing it out pretty hard to get any power, to get up hills or to do anything like that. We were in Germany. We brought it to Germany from where they bought it in Georgia. And the head gasket blew for many reasons. But I personally think one of the biggest reasons is that the cars they're wound up so hard just to get any power out of them, because back then, I mean, a diesel without a turbo would have been 70 horsepower maybe, and with one, 90. Well, I had an 82 Volvo 245 station wagon, which was a diesel, and I had the 4-speed transmission, the same transmission that was in the turbo Volvo that I did the review of. And it maybe made in the mid 70s. Well, you get a car with a horsepower number in the mid 70s that weighs 3,500 pounds, that's a recipe for disaster. I remember when I bought the car, I bought it from an old guy who worked at a hardware store, and he was on 20th Street in Leavenworth, Kansas. 20th Street from where he lived was completely flat for about 1.5 miles, and then it went on a very steep incline going up. And I remember him telling me, if you can go through that red light, if you can go through that light when it's green, do that. You need to do that. Don't stop. And of course, you know, I'm like, whatever, man, that's cool, whatever. I stopped, and let me tell you, the speed limit was 40. I couldn't get it above 25, and I was belching black smoke like crazy. One of my stories I talked about mentors that have taught me. My friend Vince from Ecuador. You know, I said on that video, I talked about how when I would come to his shop, he'd be very, very honest with me if I bought a car. And he would say, good job, good job. You know, I think you did a good job. But if I came in with a piece of crap, he would usually give me a lecture about what a piece of crap I just bought. Well, I showed up in that diesel station wagon, and he'd been working on older European cars since the early 70s. He came up to me and he goes, is that a diesel? And I said, yeah, Vince, I'm going to get great gas mileage. And he just goes, yep, that's a big piece of crap. And he walked inside, didn't even lecture me, didn't even say anything. And then he walked out one more time and goes, just so you know, I'm not working on that thing. And I was like, oh, that's pretty bad. So I had that for maybe a year, and sure enough, I think the reason why it lasted for the old guy was he only drove it 2 miles from home to work and then work to home. I, again, tried to use it as a daily driver. Now, when you have the speed limit on the interstate, 70 miles an hour, and you're coming up a ramp, you can't be coming off of that ramp at 30 miles an hour. You're going to get killed. I mean, you guys who live in places like Chicago or Atlanta, you know what I'm talking about. I've watched you guys drive. And so when I was driving it, there were moments where I was actually kind of scared going up onto the interstate. Well, in order to get the car to get to interstate speeds, I was wrapping it out. I was throwing those RPMs about as high as I could. Well, unfortunately, I blew my head gasket, just like my mom and my dad blew the head gasket in their car. And to get it fixed was not anything I wanted to pay for, and really no shop wanted to do the work on an old Volvo diesel station wagon. The diesel motor actually came from Volkswagen. You know, funny story, when I had the car, I thought to myself, this is when the internet was new, and I was living on my house in Kansas, and I'm like, man, this isn't lame. Everybody wants to say my diesel is lame. It's not lame. Other people must have one. So I looked on the internet to see who liked old European diesels. And one of the names that came up was the comedian Carrot Top. And right away I went, oh, that's the only guy who's into these things? I'm screwed. Well, I think that the diesels have come a super long way since the early 80s. They're a lot more dependable. And I mean, they put diesels in the Volkswagen Bugs, the Jettas, the Passats. But I will have to say that even though my dad was a big Volkswagen fan, and he was really big on diesel technology, I would say for the money today, even for the money back then, I would say a hybrid is a much better idea because you get more power, the gas prices are less, and you get better fuel economy. So I hope you guys liked this video, and I hope that you know who asked for it, you know who you are. I hope that you guys enjoyed it. And just remember, if you like diesels, go for it. If you have something that you want to say in the comments about a diesel that you owned, go for it. And if you have a car that you'd like me to look up on Motorweek, feel free to leave it in the comments. All right, guys, bye.